Top down, bottom up, and inside out. The first two are strategies for creating worlds. The second one is ones audiences use to process those worlds. Top down and moves from big ideas to the little details themselves. You take one major concept and then extrapolate it out. Those people who are top down are planners, often called that, and they use outlines and such ahead of time. They build out by extrapolating their ideas. An example would be you would start with the concept of, let's say, a world that exists where dragons keep humans as pets. You would then have to filter down, like, what are the dragons, what are their abilities, how has that affected humans, how has it affected their cultures and their technology, etc. Bottom up is the opposite in that it takes existing ideas and then finds the fantasy conceits by looking at those and finding the patterns within them. They're often known as pantsers or discovery writers because they like to work without the outlines, just get the words on the page, and then they like to build up by figuring out the fantasy conceits after the fact by finding patterns between existing things and using streamlining to connect them all together. They look at antecedents of what's necessary for their existing ideas. An example of that would be a scene in the story where a woman uses magical fire to defeat some fairies to save her two husbands. In that example, she's using fire, which means she's using physics conceit. There's fairies, so that's either biological or metaphysical conceits based upon if they obey the laws of biology or if they just, are magical beings. And then she's practicing polyandry, so that's probably part of the culture, and we'll have to look at, what is the society like if that's the case. Inside Out, on the other hand, is how audiences process this information. It's taken from role-playing games where it was shown that characters and players only really care about world-building details that pertain to that specific session. So for instance, if you start out in a dungeon, you only want to know why is the dungeon there, etc., etc. Then as the game goes on, you start wanting larger and larger details about the world. So, what is this city nearby that has this dungeon? Why is that city there? What is the kingdom like? How is that kingdom affected by other kingdoms? And as the game goes on, they form a concept of the world based on details that are specific to the sessions. This is something that authors should keep in mind, and just how people process their world building details. So instead of feeding them one big info dump, you sprinkle it out until the audience can reverse engineer your fantasy conceits. So no author is either top down or all bottom up. They use mixtures and strategies of both and need to keep those in mind, as well as the inside out processing to build better worlds.